Finally, the last market model is the oligopoly, and the oligopolist or oligopoly means a bunch of small monopolies, and they're very unique situations. The automakers are the prime example. There were only 6 or 7 or 8 high production automakers, and they control the market. They are the market. The airline makers, baseball or football leagues. Do you want to see football in a certain city? You only can go to one. And for the NFL, you have to go to the team that represents that state or has the franchise. Those are oligopolies. For our purposes, we'll use the automakers. And again, the cost curves are the same. There's your marginal revenue curve. But there's something a little different about this. We call it a kinked demand curve. Why is that? Because the marginal revenue curve slopes downward, like we did with monopolistic competitors' monopolies, then kind of slopes downward again. So the actual reason for that is the demand curve is such that, and think about the automakers for a minute, if one of the automakers decides to raise price, the competitors will not follow them. They'll see if they could make money there. For instance, the $40,000 vehicle is produced by Mercedes, by General Motors, by Ford. There's a certain market category. Mercedes might put a few more bells and whistles and charge a lot more. They'll do it on their own. The other competitors will, that will become an elastic scenario, a flat scenario. And the competitors will stand back and watch them. If they make money, fine. But generally speaking, they're out on a limb. They're raising those prices and hoping people will pay more for essentially a $40,000 automobile with the same, but with more bells and whistles. However, when one of the competitors, one of the automakers drops price, they follow suit, and the marginal and the demand curve becomes more inelastic on the way down because all competitors move together in lockstep. So that's why you have a kink demand curve. The rivals don't follow on the way up, but they do follow on the way down. They'll match price changes, they'll match price cuts, but they will not match price hikes. So how does this work? Well, to find the proper price, we drive up through the middle of the kink, and it's a little confusing, but not that much. Go right through the middle of the kink on the marginal revenue curve. It crosses the marginal cost curve here, reaches the demand curve up here because people will pay more for a car because of branding, and then you would pay for, say, a generic car again. And the price is here and the quantity is here, just like in the other two models, and the inefficiencies would be here because the actual full output would be down here. Again, consumers will pay more for the product and buy less car for the branding. But again, the one thing you need to understand, it's game theory. And why do I call it game theory, or why does an economist call it game theory? Because under the oligopoly model, the automakers are less concerned with the consumer and more concerned about the other competitors because the market is theirs. You want to buy a car, you can only go to 6 or 7. Think about it. You want to buy a car, you can only go to 6 or 7 big production companies, Honda, GM, Ford. I'll name them, and you can name them yourself. But the bottom line is you're buying the car from one of them. And so what's going to make one more profitable than the next is beating the competition and not so much worrying about the client, even though the client is important. They're more concerned with producing a better product versus their competitors, since the consumer is going to buy from one of them anyway, and a car for many people is a necessity. So what happens now is you have a game theory approach where the oligopolists are more concerned with what the competitor thinks than what the consumer thinks. So it's like the prisoner's dilemma, the famous prisoner's dilemma. 2 people are caught for a crime. If both of them keep quiet, they'll have the best deal. If one of them confesses, and then he or she'll get the better deal than the other person. Generally speaking, one of the prisoners, even though it's better for both to keep quiet, one will confess, and that's generally the prisoner's dilemma. And it's the same thing with the automakers. They will generally worry about even if it doesn't benefit them, they'll do things that will give them an edge over their competitor so that they can have the most attractive product. Because once again, they need to produce they need to beat their competitor because their consumer or their client will buy the car at any point. They're going to buy a car. Question is, who are they going to buy the car from? So they're always looking for the dominant strategy. On page 240 and 241, they talk more about the strategies that most managers use. They talk about the Nash equilibrium, which I won't get into here, but if you ever saw the movie Perfect Mind, that was Nash. He was a brilliant man. He was one of the, he won a Nobel Prize in economics for looking at a set of strategy from which all players are choosing their best strategy, given the actions of other players. Given the actions of other players is the key. That's the Nash equilibrium, a set of strategies from which all players are choosing their best strategy, given what the other players are doing, and not so much with what the optimal strategy is. Again, more concerned with their competitor than with the client, because they really are playing against the competitor. Just like in Major League Sports, most teams want to beat the competitor and not so much worry about the client or the fan on the field. Not that they're indifferent. Don't take that the wrong way. But it's more important for them to beat the other teams, because if they put a better product out, they win a championship, they're always playoff dominant, people will want to watch them. So that's the difference between the oligopolist. So we have the four major market models. The most efficient is the perfect competitor, followed by the monopolistic competitor, followed by the oligopolist, and lastly the monopolist. Please review these videos in context with chapters 7 to 10. Thank you.